is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke, and Ben Alexander. The Pacifika last night in Melbourne showed the way. Are the Wallabies up to it this weekend?
Oh, we'll find out, mate. We'll certainly find out. I mean, I've got a bit of something to confess, that I turned the telly off at 14-0 and put Hunt for Red October on. I'm still really hurting from Saturday. Rugby, the great thing about rugby is there's many ways to skin a cat. You know, you can bash a team or you can probably outskill them. But what I saw on Saturday was the Lions only bashed us. They had better shape and attack and were more skillful. So I was just really flat, and I wanted to be optimistic and hope that Australia could put up a good fight. And they've tried not bagging the effort. And obviously, I watched the highlights this morning, and the Pacifika did rip in physical. I saw they absolutely towed them up in a scrum or two. So
they went after them.
Yeah.
They played the way that I think we all hoped that the Wallabies would play in the first Test match, instead of playing like statues, which is what we got from the Wallabies.
And the one thing to our advantage, like the Lions got a lot of advantages, they picked 4 countries to pick from, but they're at the end of a very long season. Those guys are tired, and you saw it in the second half. They came out guns blazing, they did a job, and then the Lions cruised the second half. And the only way we as Australians or the Wallabies can take advantage of that is taking the Lions to a point of fatigue where they're uncomfortable, and they might roll over. And it looks like the Pacifika guys took them there physically last night, and
absolutely
the Lions
went after them.
They went after them.
But they niggled them. There were scuffles all over the place. Nothing dirty or bad, but they were bumping and bruising and on the ground. There were the elbows, and there was it was uncomfortable. That's exactly what it was for the Lions.
There was that Tristan Riley, so his yellow card. I saw that. Oh, that was a pretty decent tackle. And I saw Charlie Gamble came across and shoved someone, and Owen Farrell came in, push and shove. They got it in their face. And I did see a really interesting bit that I missed on Saturday. I saw it, but it didn't click, that Matt Burke picked up on Stan when Curry snotted Tom Liner. Tom Liner took that high ball and was a couple inches off the ground, and Curry smashed him, but no Wallaby guys came and sort of pushed Curry, said, "Oh, mate, like..." Yeah. And I was never much on the push and shove side of games. It's something that Michael Cheika was, Cheika would have been all over. Why weren't you boys in there?
But it's a physical game, isn't it? I was talking to Eddie Jones this morning, and we were discussing this point of physicality. That's the entry point. So, just going back to last Saturday night, why was it, or how is it, that the Wallabies just didn't get out of the gates?
Well, physically, it's partially the side they picked. I mean, injuries. Will Skelton and Bobby V, so there's a bit of that. Why? I don't know. I don't know I'm not any intel on what strategy, what game plan, how they were going to go about the game. But yeah, we just got found short in a number of areas, not just the physicality for a start. Off the kickoff, Slips tried to carry, they snotted him, big hit from Curry, then Targ Burns straight over the ball, boop, 3 points within a minute. Yeah. That really, my waters went then, as you sort of said. Last week, your waters were about to go. My waters just... Yeah. At that moment, I thought, it's not a great start. And being in that position, 12 years ago in the decider, when we knocked on off the kickoff and then Corbacero scores, that was kind of looking back, you didn't know it at the moment, but looking back, that was a real warning sign for what would happen in that game. So when you're up against a great side, fully firing, you've got to start well. And, the Pacifika, they didn't start great last night. They leaked those 2 tries, which kind of led me to changing the channel. But they dug deep, they fought in, and they took the Lions to, judging by the highlights, they took them to an uncomfortable spot and nearly nicked the match.
So Finn Morton, welcome from the great southern city of Melbourne. You were there last night. What were your views on the way that the Pacifika team took it to the British and Irish Lions?
Guys, I think just firstly, what a cool occasion for rugby, right? This is that game. I think that was kind of the sentiment post-game that from Tasai Kefu and Kurtley Beale, the occasion was almost bigger than the result, and they had a performance they were proud of. And I'll tell you what, after 14 minutes, I was a bit like Benny. I was a bit like, okay, when it was 14-0, sorry, I thought, okay, this could be a repeat of the AUNZ game, unfortunately. And I thought, we wanted something competitive, but they clawed their way back. Tristan Riley sent to the sin bin early on for a high shot, Darcy Graham, but then he comes back on, goes from being zero to hero pretty quick, didn't he? He was yellow carded 5 minutes in, came back in the 15th minute. And I think intercept try in the 18th minute, picked off Blair Kinghorn. So that was a turning point. But then the character they showed to back that up, 3 minutes later, Sarah scored. They were up for it. And I think what you said before, Pemby, the Lions being a bit uncomfortable, they were. And I don't think they were realistically going to lose that match at any point, to be fair. I think they still had just something about them, but still, that was by far the game of the tour. And it's just a bit of a shame that it's come so deep into the tour with 2 games to go now, because if that was on early on, that would have really set the tone.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great disappointments for me, is that none of the Australia, the Waratahs in parts, the Brumbies in parts, but last night we saw a really dedicated, hard-working, working for each other, and great credit to Todai Kefu and his coaching team to be able to assemble a team that delivered that sort of performance last night. But, the Wallabies were there in the ground watching it last night, and I do hope that they were paying attention as to what it is they have to do, because we know that the Lions clearly have better players than the Wallabies. If you line up person for person through whichever 23 they pick, the Lions are going to have a better team. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the game. So you have to go about ways of unsettling them to the point that they don't perform at their best on Saturday night in Melbourne. And you would hope that with 90,000 plus people in the MCG that we will get a performance out of the Wallabies, because I was desperately disappointed by the whole show, Benny. I was a bit with you. But prior to the preview show, I was down on it all, and then Eddie Jones and Ewan McKenzie convinced me that there was belief and there was a path forward. But we certainly didn't go down that path. And I just wonder, in a week like this week, what Joe Schmidt can do to get the performance that he needs. So, Ben Alexander, you've been in many test preparations where you're coming off a disappointing loss. How do you shift it? How do you move it from disappointment to optimism?
You just got to do a good review and not beat yourself up too much. Like, you just got to, something I wish looking back at my career, I'd review things thoroughly, but I'd get really hard on myself. Those Wallaby guys, they absolutely tried. Like, they went out, they maybe were they well prepared enough, I don't know. Maybe they just weren't mentally in the right spot, like, and didn't realise that maybe the intensity of a Lions Open, the intensity of the Lions brought, maybe they were surprised. I think everyone tried. They absolutely tried, and they certainly, the second half shows that the Wallabies did try on Saturday. Were they mentally in the right spot? I don't know. Probably, obviously, no, they weren't. And you like to think that they will be this week. They'll be more prepared, more ready, understand the occasion and the challenge that's in front of them. Because you can watch all the footage of all the Lions warm-up games, but it doesn't really mean anything until you hit that first test.
But how do you recover confidence? How do you build belief?
There are so many examples in sport of teams turning things around in a week. I mean, the number one, and Ewan said it, a week is a long time in sport. I mean, and I do think we're a good chance that the path, there is a path forward. It's very narrow. A lot of things are going to go right, and very easily could we stray off that path and things fall apart. And Eddie said that there is he reckons, the Wallabies at a point on Saturday will be in a chance to win the match. And I think we can win this Saturday. I mean, I just feel really flat that I think we're no chance of winning the series. And if we do win this weekend, the Lions will regroup and, they'll do the job. But maybe that's a bit of my scar tissue from 2013 where, we just lost the first. We managed to dig deep, win the second, and then the Lions really, they took it up 2 or 3 levels in that third test. So part of me, maybe I'm looking too far down the track, but you review, you hold on to a couple of glimmers of hope. So the pick and drive has been, Ewan also said short sides. I just think probably we haven't talked enough about the injury to Noah, how much that's disrupted our attack, because our attack looked really good on that spring tour last year with Noah pulling the strings. There's a bit of continuity there. The Noah, Lenny Ikatau combo were really good, and Suwali was fitting in nicely with Len. So losing Noah, I think we'll look back and say that was probably a huge blow to lose our top fly half so close to the season. I think that really knocked us around. So we've got to simplify our attack. I thought Tom Liner did great, all things circumstance. But yeah, review, hold on to the glimmers and really double down and maybe change one or two things up. They can't change too much because as Link and Eddie said on the last episode, it is only a week, so you maybe got 3 training sessions. And I do think, we've got to mix the things up selection-wise. But again, we say, we need Will Skelton back. But again, you can't expect one bloke to come in and change everything. Like, of course, it will help to have him there, but 1 through 23 are all going to have to play 10, 20% better in that first 20 minutes to sort of get a bit of a lead and make the Lions uncomfortable.
So, Finn, you are on the ground in Melbourne, as I say. You were at the Wallabies media conference this morning. Harry Potter made an appearance. What did Harry have to say?
Well, it was quite cool, actually. An empty MCG. He was kicking the Sharon and the Gilbert around with a couple of Essendon players, Harry Wilson too. But I think the message from Harry, some other players this week as well, there's still confidence there and genuine belief. I think they can take some confidence out of that second half last week, and that's what they're channeling. But at the same time, if we're being honest about it, like the Lions took the foot off the gas, didn't they, last week, that last 20 minutes? They were ahead by 24 points to 5. So I think, like Ben said, this Wallaby side, they do have to be 20% better individually going into this week, but the belief's still there. They've done it before. They did it 12 years ago, right? So, but when there's 90,000 fans singing and chanting at the MCG on Saturday, and most of them Lions fans, it's going to be pretty tough. But there is confidence there. He did kind of hit back at response to Sir Clive Woodward's comments about the losing mentality that Harry Wilson was. He deemed Harry Wilson to show last week by kicking the ball out in the final play of the game, saying every player on that field wants to win. This is what Harry Potter said. Every player wants to win this week, and there's nothing about them that shows a losing mentality. So, look, they're confident, but can they get the job done? Because it's a pretty daunting task. I don't think the Lions were as good as they could be last week either, and I think that's the scary thing.
So listen, before we talk a little bit more about Saturday's test match, I do want to just go back to last night and the TMO again, talk about it once again, because it really got into last night's game and had an impact on the flow and the rhythm and just the experience of watching the game. Finn, was there any discussion after the game, any questions asked at the press conferences about the TMO?
There actually wasn't, to be honest. It was more, again, from the First Nations Pacifika point of view, it was more about the occasion and what it meant. And even obviously Pete Samu's name was mentioned a few times. I think there was apparently some fans in the crowd. I didn't see them with my own eyes, but some fans with Pete Samu masks. So it was definitely a talking point this week, right? So that was always going to be brought up. Him not being allowed to play by the Lions, being blocked. And as for the Lions, it was more about the fitness of some players and how they think they're tracking, but no comment about the TMO.
Well, for mine, I just found it...
That Riley tackle, yellow card, mate. For Tom Curry not to get carded for that hit in the first test and for Riley a yellow card, that...
I just think it's getting to the point where the referees are losing control of the game because they have the TMO on the buzzer all the time, and they can't help but when the TMO calls in, well, they've got to stop the game and listen to what they've got to say. But there were just so many interventions last night that just stopped the game, and ultimately, as you say, there were a number of issues that were called out that really, on balance, were they really going to have an impact on the game? And I think World Rugby's got to do something about it and do something about it fast. It's quickly getting away from us. Okay, we're now 3 weeks into the international season, 3 weeks into the international season. It's not improving, and there needs to be a change. Eddie Jones has got a good solution, I believe, where he says that the TMO, one phase before a try is scored, go back and have a look if there's anything there, if there's a knock on or anything else. If there's foul play and it's an obvious red, get involved. But otherwise, leave it to the referee and leave it to the assistant referees to get on with the job, and let's stop trying to chase perfection, because we're never going to get there. And it's got to be about the fans, and it's got to be about the fan experience. That has to be the central decision-making point, not the purity of the game, the experience of the fan.
So you think it's more the referees got to get every call right? They're chasing that more so than the safety? Because I look at are they trying to get all these calls around player safety, like with all those yellow cards, or do you think they're trying to get every call right because they're just so worried about getting in trouble, and they get the call on the bookies are going to come after them?
Well, I don't think the referees want to be seen to be a decisive factor in the game, but by not wanting to be a decisive factor, we're getting to this point of we're chasing, where's the purity of every decision? And I don't think we can ever achieve that. The safety, no, I'm totally for that, but if it's not foul play, I don't think that it's going to, by the TMO continuing to come in, I don't think it's making the game any safer. And I think the referee is the best person to judge because they're the ones closest. And you've got the assistant referees there as well. And if the referee does want some help, the referee can then ask rather than be told, because it's just making the game too slow. And while ever the game is slowed up, it's going to have an impact then on the composition of the teams and the composition of the benches that are selected. And you get these, gigantic teams because there's no fatigue coming into it because, everyone's going to get a break. And again, the game also seems to be able to be slowed up at times. Like there were a couple of times last night where the Lions were like, yeah, we don't want to play on at the moment. We need a break. And they just walked away from the line out and they got themselves in a little huddle. And the referee sort of came over and said, oh, hang on, guys. Listen, do you mind coming up and should have blown a short arm penalty? Let's get on with it.
Ben O'Keefe, to be fair, I thought he did a good job trying to speed the can't remember the guy's name, the Georgian ref last night, but I thought got to give credit where credit's due. Ben O'Keefe did try to speed that first test up. But I look back, to the second or the test series 12 years ago, mate, every scrum one of their front rowers would go down before every line out. The hooker would be late to get there. It's just too easy to slow the game down. And I think at test level, this concept of fitness is it's not as important as people think. And I think Tanya Tupo should be picked regardless how fit he is.
Yeah, well,
regardless, who cares? Then just play him the minutes that he's fit enough for.
Well, again, last night you did see the power, and when he does get his scrummaging right, he is an absolute handful. And his sniping, his ability to pick and go, his ability to get over the game line, he's a big, strong player.
I mean, how many of the Lions players, Finn, do you reckon when they, before they were coming out, a couple of what players on the Australian roster would they actually be a bit nervous about and actually spend time analysing?
Well, I don't know who they're analysing. That's what they're doing behind the scenes, right? But I think Tanya Tupo, the opinion from up north is that he's still this powerhouse player that he has been for, a decade in Australian rugby. And there's even, colleagues of mine, other journalists who are from up north who are surprised that he's not in the Wallabies 23, and there's merit to that. Of course, his form over the last couple of seasons hasn't been what it once was, right? And that's no secret. You can't hide from that. But when he gets things right, damn, he's a weapon, isn't he? And we saw that last night, especially at the set piece. I think the Lions, their scrum throughout the whole tour has consistently been a bit of a weakness for them, I think. It's something that, the Western Force had some ascendancy in, so did the Queensland Reds, and the First Nations of Pacifika side last night did as well. So if the Wallabies had that power, then again, that's huge. Even to go back to what you guys were talking about before about the physicality, having someone like Tanya Tupo, huge. Lukan Salakaia-Lotto is probably the form lock in Australian rugby right now, and he's not in the Wallaby squad. He's versed the Lions 3 times now with the Reds, AUNZ, and First Nations of Pacifika, and he was class in all 3 of those matches. So you look at these guys and some guys who aren't in this Wallaby squad, and you can't help but go, what if? Especially when we kind of look back at the first test and look at where the Wallabies got outmuscled and outbeaten. It's having those powerhouse players in that Wallabies team be huge, but they won't be there.
Yeah, certainly last night he was an absolute handful. Pushing himself off the fence and like ripping in, running straight and hard and really making it difficult for the Lions players to bring him down. Finn, on the ground down there, what's you're picking up any sort of selection tips, any ideas, anything else that's going on down there that the Rugby Unity audience needs to know as they prepare for this weekend?
Have you got any scoops for us, mate?
Yeah, mate. It's. I have heard that this Wallabies team's good. That's all I've heard. It's I think different or better than last week, and I think that's what people can expect. So obviously, Rob Valetini and Will Skelton both available, so that's going to be huge. But I would love to see what else they're going to do. Even Michael Hooper's comments on Stan Sport. I'm not sure if you boys saw this, but calling for Hunter Paisami to start at 12, Len Ekatau to shift to 13, and put Joseph Akusa-Suli on the wing. I actually really like that. So I would love to. Can't wait to see if Joe Schmidt does that. I think it would be a risk, but one that I think will pay off. So, but the takeaway is, like I said, I have heard it's a good team, better team from last week.
And so what time tomorrow do the Wallabies name their team, and what time do the Lions name their team?
Putting me on the spot, mate. Have a look at the media schedule for tomorrow. I think it's about 1:30 normally for the Wallabies, and the Lions are usually a bit later.
Okay, but we will know both teams will be selected tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. Like the Wallabies, they already know behind the scenes, right? But we'll know this time tomorrow, I think, and the Lions keen to see what they do as well. Bit of a weird week for them, considering they win the first test. All eyes are on the second test, but they had to prepare for that last tour game against the First Nations Pacifika. So. Andy Farrell, at least going off last night, didn't seem to suggest that they had actually named their team yet behind closed doors. So they have a day off today. So I think those coaches will be having some team meetings and figuring that out. But a bit of a short run-in for a potentially defining test match for the Lions, 80 minutes away from history.
I'd be surprised if they didn't know, and I'd be surprised if the Wallabies didn't know very early in the week, to get that preparation right. I think Saturday.
The Lions, they probably would know, but I guess you can't really confirm anything until you see how players come through in that First Nations Pacifika game, right? Like various injuries, for all they know, someone like Jack Morgan could have had a blinder before the game. So, I'm sure they had names penciled in, but they'll probably have a better idea now.
So, listen, before we wrap it up, there's just one other sort of topic I do want to talk about, and that is the appalling treatment of Owen Farrell when he was appointed as the captain of the Lions last night against the First Nations Pacifika team. The abuse that he copped online because he was appointed captain, obviously by the leadership of the Lions, and everyone knows that his father is involved, but it just is so desperately disappointing that there are people involved in our game who don't observe, the fundamental value of respect and acknowledge this guy for who he is, which is one of the greatest players the game has ever seen. And last night we saw it all again. He was absolute class there last night. He held the team together when they were under a lot of heat. And as you said there before, Benny, when there was, he got involved, Owen Farrell was getting himself involved at different times when he didn't like the behaviour of what was going on. He led the team magnificently. He played magnificently. But when he was selected, there's such bile and such abuse, and it just has to stop. It chased him out of the game once before. And I don't know where people get off on thinking that this has got any part to play in our game. And so it's got to stop. And so if any of you are out there listening to it now who've done it, have a good look at yourself. It is a disgrace that he would be treated this way. And for one of the great players, you think of everything that he's achieved with England. You think of everything that he's achieved with Saracens. You think of everything that he's achieved with the Lions and the contribution that he's made, European champion, player of the year, European championships, Six Nations titles, everything. He hasn't won a World Cup, but I don't know. I find it so desperately disappointing, and maybe in this day and age, there's this acceptance of it, but I don't agree. I'm never going to accept it, and I want to call people out to say, wake up to yourselves and stop.
Oh no, something I thought about. I cop a bit of criticism, and I started playing when social media just sort of was really so late 09, 10, Twitter, Instagram, all this stuff was first. Like technology was just being invented, and when I first made the Wallabies, I remember if you come into the team room. And they're like, for breakfast, and all the newspapers are there. I remember Dan Vickerman going, don't read the paper, or he'd just toss it in the bin or whatever. You didn't want to read any criticism, you just throw the paper out. Whereas now, everyone has a microphone through social media. Everyone can comment on a post, and often the person with the most vilest comment, the algorithm promotes that. And it is sad. It's just, I guess, a reflection. And I definitely let it bother me. I was definitely not prepared, and there's no way that the media managers could prepare us for. It was such a big technological shift in the way media and social interaction that there's no way they could have prepared players. And I hope they prepare players better for it now. I think the only way really, Owen's probably handled, I've never heard him comment about it. And I think all class, he just sort of know. The people that comment that stuff, they are chronically depressed and they're miserable about their lives, and they're taking it out on someone that's out there having a go. And that's something I look back at the people that were very critical of me. They're probably right. I certainly did make mistakes, and I was far from perfect with how I was playing. And the fact they're even comment, it means that at least they care about the game. They're just in a really bad way themselves, and they don't know how to articulate themselves constructively, and so they just spit bile over the keyboard because it's just so easy to do it. So I just look back and I just got real pity for people that do that. That if you were going to say something about them on the internet that you wouldn't say to them if you were face to face, I don't think they'd say a single thing to Owen face to face.
No.
But if you're the type of person that says something about him on the internet that you wouldn't say to them face to face, like you said, Pemby, have a good hard look at yourself. But I don't think those sort of people are capable of doing that, mate. And we should just move on, forget about that they exist, and just hopefully technology. I think I saw something. I remember I was chatting with Nick Berry after the World Cup bronze medal match that he refed. Bumped into him, had a bit of a yarn, and he was saying about all the vile he got from the South African, from fans.
After Erasmus went after him, which was unforgivable.
Death threats and that, and now they're looking into technology now that will, like AI, that'll just scrub those comments out. So I think we need that sort of technology's been a big part of the problem, but we need technology to be a big part of the solution, to have algorithms that just find deadbeat comments like that and they just get deleted straight away, and we never have to talk about give microphones to those idiots.
Finn, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts actually on this, Pemby. It's those fans booing Farrell quite intensely. If they were walking down, through Melbourne CBD today and they saw him, do you think they would ask him for a photo? Probably, right? Like he's an icon.
Some would.
He's an icon of the sport, and like you said, Pemby, he's one of the all-time greats. He led England to the World Cup final in 2019. Obviously, they fell short against the Box. And then, 4 years later, they were actually very close to beating South Africa in the semi-final at Stade de France. Probably should have won that semi-final. And, if he'd won one of those 2 World Cups, like, his status...
I don't think it'd stop the idiots, though. The idiots would still boo him.
Probably not, but I mean...
But Richie McCaw copped all these idiots would spray him, and you can't stop him, baby.
Yeah. Sorry, Finn. Interrupted you.
No, it's a good point. I mean, as someone who grew up in Australia with a lot of rugby mates, they hated Richie McCaw partly because he's so good. Was so good, and it's the same with Farrell. Like, there's an element of respect there, I think, in the sense of like, this guy's clearly a danger man for the team who's trying to beat my team. But at the same time, it crosses a line. I think what he's done for the sport, what he's done for the game, definitely deserves more respect. I think rugby sport, you do need characters, you need villains, and I think there's an element of that type of stuff, which is, is kind of okay. Like, you think about Rieko Ioane, how he goes on social media and he kind of, leans into the villain aspect of it all throughout the Super Rugby playoffs and stuff. I think that's a bit of fun. But when it starts getting personal and you start if anyone's sending messages to any rugby players, any death threats or anything like that, then that's just obviously not on. It's just rugby at the end of the day. and he's very good at what he does. Owen Farrell.
And booing as well. I don't know. I'm not much for booing. I
love a good boo.
I like it. Well, I like the standards in the game where when the kicker is taking a shot at goal. Silence, please.
I reckon that's a part of that's like actual constructive. Like I love in the basketball, if you watch in the NBA finals, and because if someone's shooting a free throw, the backboard's glass, and you can see all the fans. They're all waving their flag or their sticks, they're trying to put the shooter off. I think that's part of it.
I'm old-fashioned.
I reckon
I'm old-fashioned.
Yeah,
I just courtesy, respect, isn't that
laser
what we were
pointers?
all
I'll draw the line at laser pointers. I remember when we were playing Bernard Foley's trying to kick in Argentina and laser pointers. I'll draw the line there.
I just want to add one more thing about this, guys. But when Farrell, when he just joined the squad in Sydney, I think it was the Allianz game against the Tars, and he was shown on the broadcast during that game, and fans were booing him, and he was laughing a bit. Obviously, he understands his role. I forgot which teammate it is of Farrell's in the Lions,
but someone. Stewart.
Yeah,
it was Will Stewart.
Will Stewart. It was booing it.
Yeah.
That's kind of But it's when it's constant. Like I said, when it gets personal. I learned at a young age as a journo not to read the comments. And that's something which was definitely tough for me to get used to as well. Right, you can't escape it, and it's all pretty intense.
Anyway. I like Owen Farrell. I love him. I think he's great. I think he's a wonderful player. And I think it's bad news for the Wallabies that he's in fact in Australia. And he did show it last night, his class. And it wouldn't surprise me if they find a place for him on the Lions bench for this weekend following his performance last night. So a big congratulations to Todai Kefu and the First Nations Pacifika team. Absolutely superb, Kef. Well done. And to all of your assistant coaches and to all the players. And, just as you said, Finn, that occasion to see the Pacifika and First Nations community have this opportunity. And I think the way that they did play last night, there is a future because there was meaning. Whereas with the Australian-New Zealand team, it seemed to lack substance. Last night, there was plenty of it. So congratulations to everyone involved. So, Ben Alexander, you're heading to Melbourne. I'm heading to Melbourne. Finn's already in Melbourne. So I think the Australian rugby community will be converging on the MCG on Saturday night. And let's hope that we get a performance from the Wallabies for the ages. One for the ages. And I really do hope that they can take a leaf out of the performance of the First Nations Pacifika boys from last night because they certainly showed the way to the future. So just a reminder, if you would like to subscribe to our program on YouTube, if you just go onto the subscription and hit the bell, it will make sure that you always receive a notification that your program is now available. And also, Rugby Unity is now on Substack, so you can jump on there. And the Melbourne City Guide is available there for you, plus some new and fresh content. Favourable matchups have got some really interesting technical analysis of last weekend's game leading into this weekend. So that is something that is well worth a read. So jump onto Rugby Unity at Substack to read all about the latest contribution from favourable matchups. So to Finn Morton, thank you. To Ben Alexander, thank you once again for coming in. And to the audience, thank you for your enjoyment, your engagement and your attention, because we very much appreciate it here at Rugby Unity. But for the moment, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and we'll be back with you on Friday with the preview with Ewan McKenzie and Eddie Jones.